Good morning, or good afternoon actually. I hope you can hear me. I put some links in chats from the Slido chat in all channels, like LinkedIn or YouTube chats. You should find there a slide for Slido app. It's a nice app to interact with audience. So you could just go to their website on some other window or tab if you are on computer and put this number, and there will be some polls during and after this webinar. Like, first question I wanted to ask you is like, what would you like to learn from this webinar, on what would you like to take away from this webinar? And yeah, you could type it in this Slido app. It's anonymous as far as I know, and yeah, we will start in just a few minutes or seconds. If you would be writing someone, please be aware that I have like a tremendous latency on LinkedIn. So you hear me a few minutes probably after I spoke, and I will read your chat with some delay and be able to answer possible questions or what you put in Slido. I think the latency on YouTube is smaller, but still have it in mind, please. And I think I will briefly go to the to start our webinar. So what will the agenda look like of this webinar today? We will, if you are just joining, you could go to slido.com and put the number you see here, 3086163, to say what you would like to learn on this webinar, or what would you like to take away. That's an anonymous form. You can also write it on chat in the channel. You can see me. What would you like to learn or take away from this webinar? And how this webinar will proceed. After I will start with a brief introduction of some context, why digital fintech onboarding journeys are so challenging, because we need to gather a lot of data, and these are mainly from regulatory requirements. Probably those of you who are more on the business side or compliance side of fintechs or financial institutions obviously know it, but I wanted to make it also even for, I don't know, more IT people possibly watching this webinar. Then brief few minutes introduction about myself and Finter, the company which I co-founded and which we do this webinar with. Then we will go to the meat. So we have an overview of stockbroker onboarding of a natural person. I would say that non-natural persons, so legal entities, legal persons deserve a separate webinar or a separate material to address this way. And when it goes to this process overview, we will take a case study or service safari, so-called. So we will look through a process of a financial institution from the Netherlands. It's the Hero broker, or the Giro. It's Netherlands, so I think they would say the Hero. It's a nice process I recently saw, and I asked my colleagues to, let's say, record it or prepare it to present you. And I found it because I was looking for some exposure for Chinese or Hong Kong stocks directly. So we will go through this onboarding process, and then based on this case study, we will make it more general or abstract, see what are the best practices, what could be improved in that process or process you might be designing or having in mind or working on. And yeah, that would be the main part, and it will take most of the time we have today. Then we will move, I have a little material about different needs of different fintechs in different, let's say, sub-industries. So different data gathered, different data need to be gathered by a payment institution or a bank. And different data could be gathered by less regulated entities, for example, fiat online exchanges. And that would bring us to little summary, how can we help with onboarding processes or interaction with the customer processes where you need to gather some data. And if time allows, we will have some Q&A session. And please do submit the questions earlier on chats or LinkedIn event page, or under the stream as comments, or via Slido app, cause this time I'm not able to hear you, and again I have slight delay in interaction with you. So please do write the questions when it came to your mind, and I will try to address them on the end of this webinar. So let's proceed with the context. Generally, a lot of data which we need to gather and things we need to do with a prospect or before he becomes a customer of a fintech or a bank are guided by, on the highest level, Financial Action Task Force. Is a global body which multiple countries are members of, and those people work on regulations which allow us to live in a safer world. So we or they think how to address and limit problems of like laundering dirty money from drugs, dealing with weapons, or limit bribery of politicians, and yeah, keep the bad guys away, forbid or not allow terrorists to gain resources, allowing them to do their, let's say, terroristic activity. So to protect us citizens, this Financial Action Task Force, global body, let's say, redeems some recommendations. You could look for those recommendations, and this is like, let's say, core or common denominator for every or most jurisdictions worldwide and fintechs. What you need to know about your customers, what you need to do on their due diligence processes before you allow them to do your fintech stuff, like send money, send cryptos, or buy some loans or properties or shares in properties. And these recommendations are implemented in the law layer below. So usually it's in Europe it's EU, anti-money laundering directives. There were 6 of them. 6 is the current one, which is binding or soon will be binding, and some people from states sign up also, so you probably have some federal regulations which might be then implemented into local law. In Europe it's member states law, so Polish, Netherlandish, German law may have slightly differences in the way these recommendations and needs from this directive are implemented, and that might be just adjustment to the, let's say, local ecosystem, what's available, what's possible, and how you can do it. And then the last layer on the bottom of this pyramid you can see here, it's like the interpretation and the risk tolerance of the entity itself. So the bank, the fintech or financial service institutions have some, let's say, area in which it could decide what's its risk tolerance, and it means like what and how address this risk. So for example, Poland took a lot of migrants in recent years. Probably we are in top countries in the world which took around, I think, million or 2 million migrants from Ukraine in recent years, and major banks decide to allow opening bank accounts to these people. Of course, then the process is a bit different. It's probably not fully online. They do need to visit a branch or provide some or have some other documents like national identification number before opening a bank account with these banks. But some financial institutions or fintechs may decide not to serve, for example, migrants or people or entities which they do not feel comfortable with serving, so or just don't have access to enough data or services, let's say, from given jurisdiction. And these might be some steps which influence the journey you will see. So let's proceed. Any questions so far? Okay, I don't see. So brief introduction. I'm Martin, and I do fintech all my life. I started on studies with some mirror trading startup, and even before that I was like an insurance agent trying to sell investment policies to people. Later I joined Comarch, which is like a major software house in Poland, and I was working on various roles in this company in various jurisdictions in Middle East area, in Europe, with their financial services offer as a sales guy, as a pre-sales, as product owner, and then as a director in rolling out their offer to New York or to New York office and to US market for financial services. Then let's say I pivoted or took chance to swap the site to the fin part of fintech, so I joined ING Group, the bank entity in Poland, which is headquartered in my hometown, so in Katowice, as an enterprise architect, because I knew a lot about PSD2 payment directive, payment service directive 2, a regulation in Europe which was forcing banks to expose APIs, and that entity also wanted to take advantage of the fact that other banks have to expose their APIs, so I worked with that process and open banking initiatives, also supporting some innovation lab initiative, did some training of more than 100 people from blockchains, and covered some value-added services. And in the end I was working on refactoring a major platform and working with cloud program. That was till the end of 2020, and then we co-founded Finter. Finter, it's joint venture of a major software house in Poland, our best software house in Poland, according to Clutch Future Processing, which brings the excellence and knowledge of developing software and domain knowledge or expertise of, let's say, fintech world and fintech needs. And this is what we do, or what we do since, let's say, beginning of this year or April this year. And what does Finter? We want to be like AWS for fintech businesses, so provide some common building blocks for whatever business you run or you need to run. And we also work on some let's say operational business or tailored compositions of these building blocks, which would be useful in some business like crowdfunding business, as there is also another regulation, European crowdfunding service provider regulation, coming up on November this year, and this change might be addressed with some changes in software and processes, including onboarding processes. And we work with another operational project of InsurTech. So that's something what we currently do. I will show you later, if we have enough time, some processes, how we gather, for example, data for crowdfunding an entity in Poland, real estate crowdfunding. And all in all, we want to provide software building blocks for fintechs. So that would be the brief introduction, and let me go to today's meat, or pillar content, if you could say so. So we will walk through this process like doing service safari, and some brief overview. How does it look like? It is made out of 6 stages. So the first stage is quite obvious. You need to gather some login or registration data or initiator data, and perhaps verify email. That's something what is done on all platforms and apps, so that's quite obvious. Then stage 1, the hero gathers personal data and does identity verification through liveness check and selfie and document pictures. We will go through it, and that's like, say, that is a common need, and probably you might be interested how does this particular part look like. Another stage is gathering data about tax residencies of the customer, because it implies like how do you calculate dividend for them, or how do you send them, and it's a useful data. Legal contract, that's quite brief, but they first gather those data, and then probably in the back office there is the process of due diligence of the customers, verifying that he is not listed on any terrorist lists or sanction list, and his documents are legit. He is not a politically exposed person, and so on. This happens in the back office, or automatically or not automatically, that we cannot see from the front-end process of the customer, the process which is seen by the customer. Then they have short legal contract, which is simply accepting terms of services. Stage 4 is bank account confirmation or verifications. That's again, I think, not a result of a regulatory need, but rather practical need. They want to know that the money are flowing into this their business are coming from your account, so they verify the data in the bank account, whether they are the same, the data which will go through with the bank transfers. And they have 2 ways of doing it: manual, where you copy some data to your bank account and send a small wire, or automated, using Trustly, a third-party provider in understanding of PSD2, which allows to automate this process of putting wire name or wire notice and initiating it and confirming that it was sent and gathering the data from the account like address and your first name and last name. And final stage, fifth, it's actually like a recurring stage. It's adequacy test or MyFit regulatory test, which is about testing the user knowledge and adequacy of the financial product offered. In that case, it's about your needed knowledge of stocks and investing in stock, what risks are connected, and so on. And they have a lot of these tests for different product lines. That's something nicely solved. So you have different tests for ETFs, stocks, ADRs or leverage products, and various classes of products have separate tests which you may find in like a panel. Okay, so that's a brief overview of how does this process look like in general, and now let's go through it. So I actually started my opening of this bank account also from the website on a computer, because when I decided that I want to have exposure for stocks of China stocks, I was ready to, let's say, do that stuff on computer, but that's not the I don't know how often is this case. My colleague did it the same way, so here you may see how they allow you to start the process on a computer normal device, let's say. So you open the account, like confirm the email address, and yeah, put in your login and password. That's quite obvious, but then they ask you to actually go to a mobile app, and you need to download a mobile app. They inform you what documents, what you need to prepare before starting that process, so that you do need actually a smartphone which is able to handle the application. You do need an ID or passport, and you do need a bank account number. And then we go to the mobile app process. So if this process started on someone's mobile, probably it would start here. So you would also enter some data like email to set and, let's say, not verified account, and then the first out of 5 stages would be to provide your personal data. Again, reminder of what kind of what you will need to fulfill this process. It's a pity that they don't show how much time it can take and what are the further steps. I like such overview, but maybe some UX research dictated, or maybe not. They ask you to provide first name, last name, as in passport, and explicitly stated in the instruction. So that's fine. And then they verify mobile number or phone number with short message or phone call. We took short message. Some apps are able to copy this code from the Android no, short message app, like you do not need to copy paste it or retype it. Then they gather like residence address or living address, and you need to type it or choose countries from available list. And then they start the document verification ID. Again, explicitly state that driving license is not accepted, passports and national ID are accepted. You choose a country, obviously, from which issued this document, and then you choose whether it's like passport or national ID. And then it has some sub-steps. On the bottom you can see that there will be like 3 sub-steps. It's a sub-process of gathering this document data, and you take 2 pictures of your ID. This is often, or not often, this is used to make sure that this is an authentic ID. So if it would be faked with 1 picture only from the optimal point of view, you might not see some things. If you have a picture in angle, it allows say these professionals to detect whether there are holograms or stuff like this works fine, and perhaps also some artificial intelligence algorithms nowadays are also able to recognize it. And then it presents to the end user the data which came from optical character recognitions of this document. So again, name and surname, date of birth, document ID, and date of validity of this ID. The user confirms it. Double seems they did also some double check of document number and first name and second name. Then they gather data about place of birth and the country of birth. That's probably something you cannot change and helps to identify people coming from high-risk countries. And that's an interesting part for me. It's a possibility of use near-field communication to gather again data from your passport. Most passports do have near-field communication chips in them. However, I think it's first time I see it on a financial institution onboarding, and probably is not relevant to US market, because as far as I know, Apple chose to not allow access to near-field communication in iPhones or iPads. So in Apple products, you need a phone with Android installed. Android does allow developers access, so the apps can access its NFC interface, and through it you could scan your passport or different near-field communication stickers with this with any or not any but a lot of Android mobile devices. And then the hero wanted to use also to read the data from passport chip. That's pretty interesting or pretty nice. I think passports do need also some authorization data which come probably from the OCR stage, so from the pictures. You might need some short code to provide in the communicate sent to the chip in the passport to allow you to access the data gathered in the passport. Unfortunately, we didn't check it because we took the national ID, which is like more popular option, at least in Poland. And then they direct our user to Liveness Test, so-called Liveness Test. The user is asked to rotate his head in given directions. And I like the fact that the app shows you visually how you should do it, and if there is a backlight or some poor lighting conditions, it also makes some remarks. This is liveness check, so-called stage. It might vary across jurisdictions and according to risk appetite from the given financial institution. I saw some banks in Germany or Switzerland requiring a video call with an actual person, not accepting just, let's say, pictures or stream with such actions required, like rotating head in given directions, as a proof of liveness test. And not only liveness test cost, video call allows these institutions to make also sure that they are, for example, alone in the room, no one is pressing them to open the account, that they are sober, and so on and so on. But seems this way of probing liveness is fine in many use cases. Now it's the we skipped a little part with geolocation. Yeah, geolocation. So the hero wanted to use geolocation capability of the phone, the app, to confirm that you are in the country where you claim to be. That's an interesting choice, and I think that's something could have been done better. And 26 did it more elegantly. They used this geolocalization earlier in the process, so they also tried to suggest you the address, your like residence address or address you are living in, with assumption that probably a lot of people open bank accounts or financial services accounts at home. So they took the GPS coordinates, asked some API to convert it to the closest postal address, and pre-filled the form with data coming from such API and to confirm. So it spared user from entering address details, which was quite nice. And yeah, that's something I liked very much about that other process in N26. So here we can see this gathering data specific to a country. PESEL, it's like a unique identification number of a person in Poland. And some countries do have it, so it might be tailored to the residency or citizenship of the user. Now you see the part with so-called FATCA or tax, whether you are an American tax, not resident, but US person in understanding of US tax treaty. Finally, they also gather some data with your profession or what you do. That might have something to do with so-called source of wealth questions or processes and risk scoring. And finally, it moved to gather data about the bank account they want to interact with. So the bank account where money will come from for buying stocks, and where they will return the money or pay out dividends, or you will be able to make payouts from their brokerage account to normal bank account. And now it states the verification process. We don't have recorded this verification process. Perhaps we will show this trustly automated verification as a payment initiation service integrated with them to in some webinar later with PSD2 theme. And that's the stage. Sorry, give me a sec. So these were the stages we discussed or we went through. There is one more stage which is adequacy test or MyFit test, and in crowdfunding business or an investing business or brokerage businesses, probably also insurance businesses, this adequacy test trying to fit the financial product to the needs and knowledge of the end user is something needed. There is also some regulation directive coming to crypto world in few years, probably in EU, which will require a similar step. Let's see it again also. So after getting to this panel logging in, you are able to go through adequacy test, and that's like an e-learning platform test, let's say, with some questions about your education, and that's something probably you want to check with your legal or compliance team. But nice aspect I like in the hero about it is that if you provide wrong or question or answer which will imply some, let's say, restrictions or not enough points, it suggests you with these orange colors that it might be not suitable product for you or might be too risky for you, and when you give correct answers, you know that you gave correct answer, for example, for knowledge testing question. And yeah, as mentioned on the earlier slides or stages, this is one of many tests. You need to do separate tests or subtests consisting of some amount of questions for different product lines or products with different risks. Okay, let me go back to the presentation. Oops, sorry. So the sub-steps we saw are visualized here. I think if you leave your email on our landing page, which you will find in this event details, we can provide some, let's say, documents or go through these slides with this documentation. That's the sub process, what data were gathered on given steps. What was interesting or made me wonder why they did not ask whether the user is a politically exposed person, so-called PEP, that's something required, I think, in EU Directive 6, and it's implemented in many Polish legal financial service entities already. Is it time, or was it put somewhere, for example, in the contract that I'm not a politically exposed person? And there was also no explicit confirmation that I am opening the account to myself, so I'm the beneficial owner of the account. Maybe that's something which is also put it in the contract. We did not go into the details of the contract. But now, basing on this service Safari, let's generalize what are the best practices when designing an onboarding process. And tests, or KYC or AML. KYC is like know your customer, and AML is anti-money laundering processes. All in all, onboarding is driven by the needs of these processes. So to do it well, I think it's wise today to do it mobile friendly at least, and perhaps even mobile first or mobile forced. Mobile forced, like this one, the Hero, it happens often because of low quality of video cameras in the PCs or laptops, so and lack of some interfaces like NFC or geolocalization. For these reasons, you may opt for mobile forced or mobile first onboarding process, because we will have access to such devices or interfaces. And also a lot of users, especially natural persons and retail customers, do use it, do like it, and it has more context or places where it can be used and done, at least started. Another point we saw, it's coined here as conversational. So to gather it in small steps, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. If we have enough time, I will show you some process we did for crowdfunding, gathering data in purely conversational manner. In this process, we saw it also kind of conversational, because there were sometimes two fields or more fields on one screen, and an instruction how to fill them. It could be only one field on a screen, but that's, let's say, a matter of choice. Then something we did not experiment here with, or try to benchmark it, it's the process abandonment handling. So if the onboarding user loses his patience, has some interruptions, his doc is, I don't know, doing something, and he will drop out of this process, stop this process on any step, then it's important to handle it and not force him to start the process over from the very beginning, again entering all the data. Then the probability that he will re-enter all the data, it's, let's say, quite low, and he needs to be really motivated to enter a lot of data again from the scratch. So it's crucial to persist, so-called, this data, or save this data which he already entered, and allow him somehow to re-enter this process, whether via a link in email or by logging, when he logs in back to the app, that he could continue the process in the app. Also, you could design this process that if it's worth it, you might, for example, take that event that the customer probably dropped out from the onboarding process, and, for example, create a task in customer relation management software or call center software to facilitate that process with call center or with reminder, and also integrate or use like marketing automation tools to design this abandonment process handling, like reminders and sequence of emails asking, reminding to finish the process, or perhaps even incentivize somehow those users who dropped out. So give him some, I don't know, bonus points, additional card or better product or whatever, something which will in your business be adequate and motivate him to get the process to the really end, because that's the part where you convert a prospect to a customer. And it's important not to lose money you invested in marketing or promotion, and that's processes in fintech world. It's, let's say, quite challenging, quite long. It's far more complex than normal card in e-commerce world. So you don't want to be losing money in that process. So it is important to handle this cart abandonment process or process abandonment and make most of the possible of the sales funnel, let's say. So most of the prospects coming to the to your onboarding process and then becoming actual customers. Progressive data gathering, that's a concept again a bit connected with previous points, so make it conversational and allow user to get back to the process. And of course you need to gather this data in some steps. It might be also possible to adjust data gathering steps to the process of sales process. So you could very early gather, for example, email for your newsletter, or open like a dummy account or empty account which allows this person only to log into the app or to the web portal. And then when he decides to invest in something or make some transfer or start using it, to gather other needed data. Yeah, the hero does it in these adequacy tests or MiFID tests. There are a lot of them, but you do not need to do, I think, any to like just have the account. You do need to do the first one with the first choice of financial products you want to use, and later you could go back to some area in your application and start tests for more advanced products like derivative products or leverage products or ETFs and so on. And that might be something useful or something good to have in mind if you are a stockbroker or a platform which offers various products which may require various data. Another point is, don't ask if you can extract. We mentioned the case of proposing an address by your geolocation. That's one thing you can extract. Other things are the data from the IDs or national IDs, or some local possibilities, like in Belgium, they have like EID card, which has all the data, and by the way, it's like a binding signature. In Poland, there is something like a PUAP or Moje ID, which are like growing e-identity, which also have a lot of important data, like at least first name, unique identification number of the person, and also offer like a binding signature. In Sweden, I think they have something like bank ID, so you could also first extract some data from the bank ID. And if this would be legal entities, you have a lot of you have registers of legal entities where you can extract interesting data too, and you do not need to ask the user to enter them. You may just ask him to verify them, or yeah, that would be it. We saw here also nicely OCR'd data from the passport in this the hero process, and then they were asking only the user to confirm that it was OCR'd as it should be, so without some mistakes. That I would say is a cost efficiency to make the user check the machine, the OCR, not for example back office, but that's again a choice of the hero. Another point is keep it omni-channel, so allow the process to continue on different devices, and if it's broken even much later than it's initially started. Some parts might be not possible, like this liveness check with camera or pictures of document or NFC, because it requires a mobile device, but tests, adequacy tests, or entering some other data could be done in laptop, and you want your user to be able to do it in mobile app, web app, and or your call center, and provide all of these channels to, let's say, gather the data to the one point and have the process in different channels, let's say. Possibly in some jurisdictions also Alexa could be used, or voice assistants, to have a conversational data gathering with a voice assistant. Yeah. Another good practice is that you should inform the user what will she need and how the process will look like in general. So make sure that the user is not frustrated because he started some process and I need ID, or I need passport, or utility bill. In some more let's say countries like England, I think it's or United Kingdom, it's quite popular to verify utility bills. And I also do like some processes which give some at least estimations how much time will I need to finish at least the closest sub process or process, to know when I actually can do it, and present it to the end user. So show some user progress bar or estimated time to the end of the process or the stage. We could show it here in the top of this app earlier, and some sub steps from this liveness check, for example. Yeah, there were like 3 sub steps for liveness check and some upper progress bar of these major stages. I think in that case might be not it was a bit too high level, too generic. We like got stuck on the first or second stage in this upper progress bar, but the following stages were like contracting and adequacy tests, so they were like separate ones, but I had impression that it was uneven, this progress. So the second step or first step took a lot of effort in comparison to the following steps. So might be something to improve. And that brings us to other, let's say, fintech businesses and what might be the needs of those fintech businesses. Meantime, I may try to ask, is anyone hearing me still, or is anyone hearing me? We have some guests on YouTube. I assume that some of you will watch it asynchronously across the ocean because it's quite early in US, but that's something I didn't had chance to experience in US. As a foreigner, I needed to go to the branch to open a bank account, and digital banks were not prepared to serve foreigners. Okay, let's get back to our agenda. So it's a brief table where you can see what are the needs from different fintechs businesses, and what data have to be gathered, could be gathered in some cases. So I would say the simplest one is like fiat exchange, where you exchange currencies online, but you do not but the money are handled by regulated banks. So obviously your customers need to have bank accounts, but you do not need to do some liveness check, at least in Poland. However, still a lot of data might be useful, like verifying the bank account. You still want to have the money coming from the same person, the same owner of the bank account as the one which registered on fiat exchange platform. Probably a declaration that he is a beneficial owner, and a politically exposed person declaration, and some part like tax residencies or tax number, tax IDs from those residences will be useful or might be useful for reporting or preparing some tax fillings for such people. Perhaps not crucial, but useful, and it needs to be decided whether you want to gather useful data or just get the minimum possible to do the business you want to do. A bit more demanding business line which we are working now with is like crowdfunding or equity crowdfunding. So time being in Poland, actually the platforms do not gather much or nothing, but that will change probably with this directive coming in November. However, those platforms now offering crowdfunding in Poland leave this process to shareholder registrars, let's say. So entities, regulated entities which hold the registers of shareholders. Nowadays these have to be digital, and they could be provided by some regulated institutions, and those institutions do require such data as put it here, like shareholder, like beneficial owner declaration, politically exposed person declaration, obviously your address, tax residencies and local tax numbers. And since November 2022, also the crowdfunding platform will need to do adequacy test to be sure that the investor knows what he's doing with his money, so what he is investing in, and what are the risks connected with it. And this will also require crowdfunding platforms to gather proofs that they did it to all the investors, and classify those investors as sophisticated or non-sophisticated, and non-sophisticated investors will have to go through knowledge test, get some points, and it has to be done every 2 years. And obviously you need proofs of that, and it may imply some business logic of the crowdfunding platforms itself, like you will need to limit the amount invested in single investment or total amount invested in crowdfunding ventures. More regulated or more data is needed for payment institutions or crypto exchanges too. So if you want to move actually some value assets or money or cryptos, you do need like confirm the liveness, probably the passport or ID. Yeah, that's I think the stage where you need to have those liveness check or video chats for verifying your end customers in some countries. And stocks brokers do have to do all of that stuff plus adequacy tests. So it's, I think, the most challenging process to gather all this data. And I would say it's not the end, because okay, we named this webinar today onboarding, but in general it's due diligence of the customers. It's like a cyclical or constant ongoing process. So every time or every 2 years at least, and when some triggers happen, you do need to do due diligence of the end customers of the customers. So check whether they are not on terrorist list, on sanction list, whether they are not politically exposed person, there are no some adverse media covering these persons, there are no suspicious transactions which they are trying to do. That's something more in the back office, so we will not touch it today, this anti-money laundering or AML and KYC stuff, but have in mind that it's below the surface, let's say, it's below these processes which we today went through. Okay, we are getting to the end of our time. So let me summary how we as Finter could help you with these processes. So as mentioned at the beginning, we want to provide building blocks for the fintech industry, among others, like a party management system which can support your onboarding process and due diligence process, know your customers' needs and anti-money laundering needs. We know a lot about those onboarding flows, especially in Europe, but that's something what can be applied in different jurisdictions. So if you would like to consult your process or discuss how it could be done better, or need some software components to have it implemented, don't hesitate to reach out. We are a young company, so I don't hide that we still validate the product offer or the product packaging. So we could provide you license for backend services only, for example, doing these processes, which is then deployable on your, for example, AWS infrastructure, or in case of enterprise customers in your ecosystem with some IT, let's say, or technical patterns allowing you to fit it well into your ecosystem. And for smaller entities, it could be provided as a license, as a software as a service, which is hosted by us and maintained by us. And we may also discuss whether you would need, for example, it as a business capability, so an outsourcing of a given process. I would be happy to discuss it with you individually, so just reach out to us and we will schedule some one-to-one meeting to discuss your needs and expectations and what we can do together, and why it's worth not to reinvent such process from the beginning, or use existing platforms or fintech components, mainly for those reasons. So you have faster time to market, you save money on development, and your product owners knowledge and engagement on your side, less hassle with building these processes, documenting it, and all in all it leads to lower total cost of ownership. And that's These processes are like a compliancy need or regulatory need, often not a differentiator. I'm on, let's say, position that it's good or better to do well your core business where you add value, and outsource or buy out of the box blocks which just are needed because you need to comply with regulations, and all your competitors also do need to handle those processes. So you could use it from a vendor like us or different, not to reinvent the wheel. And now I would like you to invite you to leave some feedbacks, either in the channel where you see it, so LinkedIn, YouTube, or other. And you could also leave your email on this landing page, which is like finter.cloud/webinars/. And if you did register for this webinar, you probably we probably have your email. If you didn't, you can still do it, and we'll let you know about the following events or webinars, and probably follow up with some materials from this webinar and some supporting materials, let's say. As mentioned, there are a few more webinars coming this year. In a month, we want to talk about embedded finance, and I invite you to subscribe or leave your email either on this page or just join the event in LinkedIn on our web page, so you would be notified by us and LinkedIn about the coming next webinar. Okay, a bit over the time. Wasn't so bad, I think, the timing. Okay, any questions I could handle now or later? Okay, seems it would be it. I will be finishing now. So thank you for your time. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what was your best takeaway from that webinar, and how can we help you, or what we can do together. And yeah, let's stay in touch. That would be it. See you on later coming webinars.